I'd say that's enough people to get started now. People who can link can jump in. So, hello everyone. You're very welcome. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. So, this is Republic of Work's Lunch and Learn series, which goes on every Tuesday at 1 p.m. A variety of topics from all businesses you can learn from. Great. Any services upcoming you can find on the republicofwork.com website. So, today we'll be talking about branding and what branding is and just kind of go through the core elements of what makes up a brand. So myself, my name is Paul Wade. I'm the lead designer for the iNUA collection. And the iNUA collection is a group of 9 hotels owned and operated throughout Ireland. Five-star Mercus Hotel and four Radissons, Kilkenny Hibernia Hotel, Hillgrove Hotel, Fairways Hotel Dundalk, and Tullamore. Hospitality not the greatest industry to be in at the moment, but we're doing very well, keeping our heads up. So in a previous life, I've worked for massive variety agencies and companies, everything from international campaigns for Dr. Rucker to local marketing material for O'Flynn's gourmet sausages. Um, so just jump straight into it. Enough about me. So today, just a brief overview of what we'll be going through. So we'll be going through what a brand is not, the definition and history of a brand, the core elements that make up a brand, and examples of companies that are doing it well. So just on that, just I'll go through each individual kind of core element and then an example of company that's doing it very well. So just jump straight into it. What a brand is not. So when we talk what a brand is not, I'd love to use the example of Google, because Google are this behemoth of a company. Everybody knows them, and I would wager that everybody here uses a Google product every day of the week. Anything from the search engine to the browser, probably not Google Maps at the moment, but Gmail, and then products like the Pixel or the Google Home. So here is this giant company with a wide variety of free services that we use every day of the week, and more than likely, I'd say most people use the browser, and then you log on, you see the Google logo in the search bar. But if I asked you to put the Google colors into the logo, I'd wager that not many people could, and it just kind of brings it home that here's this brand you interact with every day of the week, and you pay so little attention to the actual logo that's in front of you. And it just kind of rings it home of everybody would kind of jump to what is a brand? It's a logo or it's an identity, but here's a logo that you interact with every day and you don't even know what it is. You couldn't kind of put the core elements to it. So in saying that, a brand is not a logo, it's not an identity, it's not a mission statement, and it's not really your product or your service, where as a brand can incorporate all of these elements. It's not individually any one of these things. And it really is. It's a thing that most people kind of. If you ask someone what a brand is, most people will jump to that it's a logo. But it's so much more than that. So, what is it? So we'll do a brief history lesson here of where branding came from. So the act of branding is believed to date back to the ancient Egyptians, who were known to engage in livestock branding as early as 2700 BC. So the famous term cattle branding, which we all associate with Westerns, is actually where the term branding came from. And this act actually has been proven to move out throughout time. So the Romans and the Greeks actually used to brand their pottery and food in markets. So the branding actually goes back a huge long way. So if we skip forward a few thousand years, we'll have the definition from the American Marketing Association, which a brand is a name, term, design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's goods or services as distinct from those of other sellers. And this definition is fine, but to me, it's just kind of a fancy way of saying cattle branding. There's nothing deeper to it. It literally is my product is blue and yours is red, so that's my brand. And it's not a very deep definition. So if we move on again, we have the father of modern advertising, David Ogilvy. He said that the brand is the intangible sum of a product's attributes. And this is absolutely brilliant, as you can see in the 50s and 60s in the Mad Men era. You have them realizing that a brand is more than this physical thing that you can see or touch, that it goes beyond just, as I said, my product is red and yours is blue. There's a personality to it. There's a group of characteristics that make it up and define one thing from the other. And then if we skip again ahead to modern times. A man named Marty Newmeyer, who I would advise everybody look up. He's absolutely brilliant if you have an interest in branding. He says a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. And I absolutely love this. I think this is brilliant. My only issue is when you say gut feeling, that kind of represents an initial reaction to something. Whereas as a business or a company, what you predominantly want to do is build up a long-term relationship. So if someone does have a gut feeling, whether it's positive or negative, the idea of a business is that they can influence that decision over time. So that if someone has a gut reaction that is negative towards your business, that if you engage with them positively over a period of time, then all of a sudden that gut feeling becomes a good feeling. So what we can say is that there has been a monumental change in how companies and customers engage with each other. This digital boom over the last 10 or 20 years has changed everything. How we live, how we engage with customers, how we do business. And now how we engage, it's direct and on the terms of your audience. Whereas as previously, even 20, 30 years ago, you decided when you advertise, where you advertise, and who got to see it. But now your customer can interact with you as much or as little as they want. They can say what they like, when they like, to who they like at any point in time. And importantly, they can also change their mind, which brings us back to the gut reaction and the changing of feelings. And I think this is a very key point that many businesses forget, is that humans are emotional, intuitive creatures. For most buying decisions, mainly smaller ones, it gets a lot different the more money you spend. But humans don't make logical decisions. They don't sit there and do a pros and cons of every purchase. Their decisions are based on emotions and intuitions and desires and feelings. Whereas most businesses will think logically about if they're releasing a marketing campaign, if they're releasing a new product or service. It's all based on stats and numbers and logic. Whereas the person buying it doesn't do that. They don't go through all the stats and numbers. They have this emotional reaction to something which makes them say yes or no. And it's a very important thing to consider. So every interaction you have elicits an emotion, and that emotion is what triggers a response. And therefore, my definition of branding is the emotional response a person has toward your business. So it's kind of a play on what Martin Newmeyer said of the gut feeling. It just takes it that little step further, and it's the emotional response a person has toward your business. So their emotion is their response. They own that emotion, so they define that response. So your brand is what they say it is. And if your brand is what they say it is, there's only one kind of logical question: is how do we control what they say? And it's very, very simple. We can't. It's impossible. It's impossible to control people's emotions. But what we can do is we can control what we say, what we do, and what we put out there as a business or a company. Because ultimately, what you put out there dictates how people respond and creates that emotional connection they have with you. And that is kind of the point. The point is that you cannot control their emotions. You can't control how they feel about it at anything at one point in time. And it's so easy for that emotion to change from one day to the next, from 1 minute to the next. So it's so important that you have the kind of defining characteristics right at the start that dictates how you interact with people and how people interact with you, and creates that positive emotion. So get into the gripe of things is what makes a good brand. And the first thing is almost obvious. It's who you are. And when I say who you are, I don't necessarily mean your USP or your unique selling point. I'm talking about your personality, or your defining characteristics. What makes you, like, what do you do? Who are you? What are your positives? What are your negatives? And being very clear about it. It's kind of, are you environmentally conscious? Are you tongue in cheek? Are you serious? All of these things are not USPs. They're kind of, they're characteristics or personality traits. And this will shape your message, how your audience receives it, and how they interact with you again. And the goal here is not necessarily to be recognizable, but be so closely identified with what you do and who you are that's what you become known for. And there is a company I absolutely love that now. I love them for different reasons, but they do this very, very well, and it's Cockbull. So they have restaurants in Cork and in Limerick, I think. And aside from their amazing chicken wings, they have this personality that is just fantastic. And it's not for everybody, but it does work for them, and they do it very well. It's this kind of tongue in cheek. They make no bones about it. Their hangover food, the big, messy, sticky finger, get stuck in food, and they have this. If you ever look at their Instagram, they have this very kind of cheeky way of dealing with people. And what's really, really great about them is that if you look at their Instagram and then you go to eat in a restaurant, that personality translates really, really well into the physical world. Their menus and their decor, and even the staff, if you ever interact with them, they're very kind of friendly, and they have no problem having a quick chat with you. And they have this kind of 360 personality on the digital and physical world. It's very tongue in cheek and very funny, and some people would almost get offended by it if you look at some of the stuff they'd say, especially with the name Cockwell that they have. They really do make fun of it, but they really are very, very sure of who they are, sure of and who they're talking to and how they want people to interact with them. They don't make any apologies or any bones about it. And it's a great example of how to kind of be very, very kind of aware of your negatives and your positives, and how to interact with people. So point 2 would be value, and value then, going on from who you are, would almost be your USP, would be your unique selling point, and kind of something more. It's a funny one, because the truth is that the people don't actually care about your business. They don't really care about the blood, sweat, and tears that you put in building it, and all these, the roots and the history. What they really care about, if you remove almost all the stuff that I'm talking about today, if you remove everything, the core thing people care about is what change you make to their life. It's what is that thing that if they put in all their effort, if they give you their money or they spend time on you, what is it that's going to make it worthwhile for them? What is that change you make to their lives? And they need to know that whatever they put in, they get back equal to or greater amounts of. And the value is the change you make, and that change is what evokes that emotional response I'm talking about. So the change is huge. The change is it, and it could necessarily be your USP. That could be the unique thing that you do that's different to everybody else, but it could be something more. It could be a combination of things. And at the risk of brown nosing, I think a company that does this very well is, in fact, Republic of Work. Even the fact that we're all sitting here right now doing this during this global pandemic, during this kind of very kind of eerie time, they're putting on this virtual workshop, and they do it every week, and they have other things going on. And even when everything's open and everything's normal, in January, I was at panel shows after work. I know they do stuff in the morning as well. So beyond the service they offer, which is your hot desk, you rent a desk and rent a chair, they have this extra element that even though I've never been in need of their service, I would have no problem recommending it to anybody, just because of the interaction I've had with them. Their staff are brilliant. They're very friendly. They're very, you'd walk in there and felt like you were part of this community as soon as you walk in. And they offer all these learning opportunities and these network opportunities and these virtual lunch and learns. And here they have this great product and this great service, but they go beyond that. That creates this kind of value that people talk about, even if you aren't in need of their service. And it's a perfect example of how to do it, of how to. Here we are with these people, which is great service, great product, but man, if there's anybody ever asked me I need a hot desk, this is where I go. This is where I send them. I couldn't honestly name another company that does it, because these are the people I've interacted with. It's a great example of how to do it and go beyond. So the next point is define and conquer. And what I'm saying here is your audience. Excuse me. The knowing who your audience is, and knowing them thoroughly, knowing them very well. So where are they? What do they like? What do they value? What do they not like? And it's that classic case of many people, and I still get it today, or not so much today in the company I'm in, but when I worked for agencies, that people would say that their audience is everybody 18 to 60, male and female, in all around the world. And that's never the case. Never, your audience is never everyone. Because if you're for everyone, then you're for no one. You can't talk to an 18-year-old the same way you talk to a 50-year-old. In most cases, you can't talk to a 25-year-old woman the same way you can to a 45-year-old man. There's different wants and needs and desires, and there's different things going on in their life that determine how they respond to things, and they're in different stages of their life. A 20-year-old doesn't want the same things as a 50-year-old does. So it's a case of be specific and pay attention to your specific audience and listen to their wants and needs. And it's a very difficult. I think it is actually when you're starting a business, it's one of the most difficult things to do is to define your audience. But once you do, once you actually have that really niche thing laid down, how you market and how you brand and how you kind of go forward, it makes it so much simpler. The process is so much easier because you know exactly who you're talking to, you know exactly where to go for the information or how to define things going forward and what language to use. And a company that does this so well, now it's Toyota. Now I know they're a global brand. I'm going to speak kind of, and I know they obviously have many different market segments. They don't work in just one. But I am going to hone in on one here, which is the hybrid market. Now, I don't think anybody could argue that Toyota owned this market. I would argue that they created this market segment. Many people kind of, if you ask them what year was the first kind of the Toyota Prius was the first hybrid, mass-produced hybrid car, and you asked them what year it was released, most people they wouldn't know, but it was actually all the way back in 1997. That was the first hybrid mass-produced car ever released, was Toyota Prius in 1997. And I think in England in the year 2000 they sold 184 Priuses, and in 2010 they sold 12,000. And that was just the Prius. That was just that one car. That was, they had that market by the time the hybrid thing and the eco-conscious person came up. They owned it, as in nobody could touch them because they've been doing it for so long now, and that Prius was in everybody's head. Um, they, I would say that they created that market, and they kind of started that bandwagon of the eco-conscious, the car driver. They, I think in 2019, the Toyota Corolla Hybrid was the best-selling car in Ireland, number one, and in the same year they had three cars in the top 10, and number 10 was a Toyota CHR, which is kind of a soft roader. And that was only released in 2018. So within a year, they had only hybrid car that was in the top 10 selling cars in Ireland. And that proves that, number one, people are moving on to a more eco-conscious kind of frame of mind. But two, that if you own a market, you can get people to move into yours if you own it, as in you become the leader in that market, and you can get people to move from A to B just because you're so well known in that market. And they own that market, and they did it very, very well. Next is consistency, and consistency is probably my favorite word in the English language. It's absolutely, I just think everything you do in business, and probably boringly in my own life, is just consistent. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean everything has to look the same and be the same. And if your brand color is blue, then everything from now on has to be blue. It's more of a case of not going and jumping on a bandwagon, not creating something or designing something or marketing something just because it looks nice and just because it's trendy. It's more about being consistent in how you talk and how you act, and your tone of voice and how you interact with your audiences, and making sure that every time you talk to people that you are telling your story and not everybody else's. It's every point of contact just needs to tell your story. It's a dangerous thing when a new trend comes in, or a new platform. I think the best way a lot of people would jump on is a new social media platform like TikTok comes in, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, TikTok, everybody's on TikTok, we need to jump on TikTok. But is TikTok right for you? Does it have your audience on it? Is that where you want to be seen? Yes, there's a chance of making a quick sale on it if someone happens to see it, but are you just ruining your brand integrity because now you're on this thing just because it's cool, and next year it'll be something else and you have to jump on that? And it's a really hard thing to do, to remain consistent, but it is just very important for your brand message and your core. Consistency is key. And there's a company that do this, and I follow them on everything. I don't actually use their product, but I just follow them on everything. Is Innocent Smoothies, and these guys just do everything with this. No matter what they do, it's from them. And they had this campaign, I think it was 2 years ago. They released a new Bolt from the Blue drink, and the drink is actually green, but they put on this huge push that it was blue, and it was done very, very well. But if you look at everything they do in this kind of, they have this tone of voice, and even here as the fonts are different and the colors are slightly different throughout, but that everything is from them. and you have the fruit in a bottle crushed. And here we have three different, very different kind of visuals, but you know every time it's from Innocent. They have the colors different, the fonts are even different in each thing. They have this the hats thing. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that, where they knit the hats for the bottles in the shop, and it's absolutely brilliant. But everything is just this air of playfulness about it, and this air of childishness about it, and I just think they do it so well. Even if we go on to these are two snapshots from their social. So we have this thing, I'll just read it out there, from Pancake Tuesday. So they said, instead of pouring lemon juice on your pancakes, why not use our sparkling lemon and lime bubbles? It won't go with them at all, but we don't sell lemon juice, so this is the best we could do under the circumstances. Sincerely, the Innocent Department of Seasonal Straw Clutching. Now these two screenshots are from their LinkedIn. So you have this, LinkedIn, which is this um, professional kind of platform that's supposed to be serious in business, and here they are just completely having fun and just making kind of a joke out of it, and it's done very, very well. Sorry guys, I'm having a problem with my screen there. Can people see it, or? Oh, brilliant! Thank you. Sorry, I just had a bit of a blip there. Thank you very much. Um, so yeah, sorry. Yes, thanks. Thank you. I can see innocent drink screen. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, guys. So yeah, so this is just a great example of how they translate, as you can see, their advertising and their general kind of big marketing campaigns into their small social and LinkedIn and professional stuff. And they, even though it's all quite different visually, it really works well and has the same tone of voice and the same kind of feeling. It's I think they do it very, very well. So the next point is keep your promises. So this is, sorry, just get rid of my chat there. So keep your promises is it's kind of just what it says in the tin. If you have a brand message or a tagline, or you use a certain tone of voice, it's just make sure you can stick to it. And the way I define that is be a brand of your word. Um, this it's kind of in the last couple of years it became very trendy to use the word authentic and be authentic. And I kind of got very annoyed with that word over the last few years, because all of a sudden these big global, I don't know if you saw Guinness releasing that a few years ago, of when Hop House 13 came out, and they had three lads in kind of a small factory, turning the oats or the barley in a thing. And I'm like, Guinness don't do that. They have these massive, these massive things where nobody interacts, and it's all this mass-produced stuff. But they came up with this, like, word, almost a small home brewery, and it just became really cool to be small and trendy and authentic, and it really kind of annoyed me. But in essence, you should be authentic anyway. You should be able to back up what you say, and it's a thing. And as a company, and I'm going to use an example here, even though I've done work for them, just kind of a quick shout out, but it's O'Flynn Sausages, a core company, and they know it, and they love being a core company. They're just so proud of it. But the example I'm going to use here is David Doyle, the marketing manager, actually did a panel in Republic of Work back in January. I was at it. It's brilliant. And someone in the audience asked a question at the end, is in, are you going to make a vegan sausage? And David was just very kind of honest with his answer. He said, we've tried, but we haven't been able to make one that we're happy with. So we've actually spent time in the factory trying to gather ingredients, making it up. But the owner, no matter what he does, he can't create the one that kind of represents the vegan sausage they'd want to create. And he's just not prepared to release something he can't stand over. And I absolutely love that answer. I thought that it was absolutely brilliant, that even though in the current times where it is, vegan is the thing at the moment, he wasn't prepared to release something, even though he could probably make a quick buck out of it. He could just release something, and a bunch of new customers walk in the door, because now they can make vegan sausage, they can have a vegan sausage. He wasn't prepared to do it because he couldn't stand over it. And that to me is, even though I said I don't like the word, is authentic. That's the definition of it. That's Graham. Be authentic. A quick book is not just that, and that's exactly it. That is very true. They weren't prepared to just just release something for the sake of releasing something, and it's a very good example of a small company growing as they are. They're a small company um, just not doing something, just even though they could do it. And I would imagine someday they will release a vegetarian and vegan sausage, and it will be brilliant. It will be to the quality of what their other produce is because they work that hard in it. So sorry, man. Next screen. Next screen. As you just saw, is word of mouth. And word of mouth is a very interesting one for me because I think the bigger the digital era gets, the more people kind of forget about word of mouth, and I think it's a huge mistake because word of mouth is now digital. If we went back to what I said at the start, that people can say what they like to who they like when they like, that is basically because of digital. That is word of mouth. Word of mouth is anyone at any time from anywhere being able to say whatever they want about you, and even people. And I think it's very important to note that even people who will never be a customer can interact and have an opinion on your brand. And if you Twitter's a great place if you ever just if all the people use Twitter, you just go scrolling through and someone says something or a company does something wrong, and all of a sudden there's hundreds of comments on it, even though they're not customers, and they're never actually going to be a customer. They have an opinion about you. And what is more important is the people who, even though they won't be a company or customer, sorry, even though they won't be a customer, have the chance to influence people who could potentially be customers. Um, and the whole idea is that even though you're speaking to this niche group of people, as we discussed in Define and Conquer and Know Your Audience, you that message, because it's digital now, it has a chance to spread without you ever meaning it to. So people will be able to interact, to be able to see what you do. So it's about creating a positive interaction and letting that spread. If you're out there and you're one of these people who like to give out or argue with people or do all these things, and it's fine. It might work for some people, but the chance is that people who aren't customers or won't be customers or are interacting with other potential customers aren't going to have a very good interpretation of what you are and what you do, and they're not going to engage with you if you're not kind of this positive interaction, or you don't create this positive interaction. They're not going to. It's a funny one. It's very interesting that we still use the phrase word of mouth, but it is digital now. Like, word of mouth spreads, and it's so much easier to spread now. And going viral is a daily occurrence now for people. But there is a company that do this very well, and it's Revolut. I'm not sure how many people here have a Revolut card, but I used these guys as an example last year when I did a talk in a college, and about 60% of the class, I think, had a Revolut card. And out of that 60%, not one person, no, sorry, every one of them got the card on a recommendation from a friend. Not one of them got it because they saw an advert for it or someone, or anything like that, or they saw, Facebook put up an ad in front of them. Every single one of them got it from a friend saying so. And I think that just says children have Revolut cards. It is a young person thing. I have one, but maybe not all young people have them, but I have one. And they do it so brilliantly. Their whole marketing campaign. I'm actually connected with Chad West, who's the marketing manager for Global for Revolut, and I had a quick few chats with him before. I was just interested to see how he does things, and he didn't say this specifically, but in essence, he was saying the whole marketing campaign is based around kind of community spreading it. It's about this kind of word of mouth thing, spreading it. Now, if you do have a Revolut card, you probably know they have this friends thing that if you introduce a friend, you get €6 back or something. Like, they'll give you €6 into your account, which probably works for a lot of people. It's a point on a night out, according to the new add €1 to your points thing. But they have this. Their LinkedIn is something I follow very closely, and they have this this kind of community thing done very, very well, where they share, you can sign up to be part of new service that they're releasing, so you're the one who gets to test it. And they have share options, crowdfunding, ideation sharing. It's brilliant. They have this big thing about their customers are really, really involved in it, and they have this kind of very positive kind of cluster of people, and every time someone uses it, I'm a huge advocate for them. I would recommend everybody to get a Revolut card. I think their service is brilliant. And that's just, even though I've never actually personally seen an advert for them, but I would recommend them to anybody. Their service works really well. their interaction works really well. So it's just a perfect example. I'd advise you go. There's a few articles out there about them, about their marketing and how they share things. So I'd advise everybody to go and have a look at it because it is very, very interesting. So if we go on to, I think this is the last point, which, oh no, sorry, second last point, which is expression. Now expression kind of dips a little bit into the psychological form of things, and it's kind of everybody searching for their identity or their meaning, and we're kind of all aware of that people express their identity through their external needs. So if you know it kind of goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs of your basic needs like your food and your safety, and then you have your esteem needs, which is your status and your recognition. And this is, if you wear a certain thing or you use a specific service, then it says something about you. If you're walking around with a Gucci bag, some people will automatically think you're rich, and these kind of things that if you wear or use a certain thing, it says a lot about you as a person, and people are very aware of that when they buy things. They're very aware of that. The difference between shopping in Pennies or shopping in Brown Thomas, and it's almost like that. If you buy a certain thing or wear a certain type of clothing, then you become part of this community. That you're all of a sudden in this group, whereas these people are wearing this, or they're in that group, and that in itself becomes a deciding factor when you're buying something. And it's a very difficult thing to tap into because you almost need to create that kind of community. But it is becoming a very big thing, and it's a very possible thing with digital because you can create these hubs where people can become this community. But it is such an important thing to consider that when people use a certain product, they kind of become a certain thing, and they use that product and they use that service to express who they are. Most people, and I think the easiest one to do it is with cars. So if someone drives a certain car, then they certain thing. You have business cars, or sorry to use the phrase, but a classic soccer mom car, or you have all these things. And there's a company, and an Irish company, who were also with Republic Work a couple of months ago, is Gym Plus Coffee. Now these guys, when it comes to community, absolutely nailed it. They have this product, which is the clothing, which is kind of casual, comfy, and fitness wear. And as soon as you buy this product, you become part of this little community, and they center their entire kind of business and marketing around this community. That even to date, I think the majority of apart from their advertising and their selling bits, the majority of their social posts are actually user generated content. They have this. If you ever go onto their stories on Instagram, it's just basically 100% of people taking selfies of themselves in the Gym Plus Coffee clothing, and Gym Plus Coffee pushing it out, and it's brilliant, and it works. It gives people that kind of few minutes of fame, and it makes people feel good because like here these guys like my photo, and now everybody gets to see it. But it also just it does create this community sense and this community feeling, and it's very very well done. They when they did their talk at Republic of Work a few months ago, they were basically saying that when they started, they had no following, they had no they didn't know what to do. They were really small. There's only the three lads in kind of a room in Dublin, and so they just started to kind of they got a few influencers on board, and they started giving out clothes for free, and they said, look, take a photo, send it on to us, and we'll put it up. And people were like, oh cool, you'll post post a photo of me. And that's, even though they're massive, they're a huge company now, and they're in America, and they're across Europe, they're still doing that. They're still, when people put up their clothes or the photo of them wearing their clothes, they'll still post it out in their social media, and they've created this huge sense of community. And when people wear their clothes, they become part of this tribe, and it says a lot about them. And I just think they kind of own that little market very well, and they used it very, very well. So if we move on, now this is the last one. This is be emotional, and be emotional is, it's quite simply, and I'm just going to say it in a line, is humanize your brand. As I said very early on, people are emotional, intuitive creatures, and you need to connect with them on that level. You need to connect with them on a human level. So it's not a case of talking at them. It's talking with them and having a conversation with them. And this whole idea of constant selling of, buy my product, here's my product, here's why I'm better than this guy, it just doesn't work anymore. People have values, and they have desires, and they have wants, and they have needs, and they have dislikes, and they will engage with brands and with companies that share the values, share their values. It's a very simple one, but it's a very difficult one. The fact is that people are, they're humans, and they're not machines. And as I said, they don't come at it with this logical approach. They come at it with, the emotions of this is what I want, or this is what I need, or I need X, Y, and Z to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and I need a company that can fulfill that so I can get from here to here. And if you're simply coming at them saying, oh yeah, well, we can do this 3.5 seconds faster than they can, they're not really going to engage with that. They need more. They need this kind of human level of interaction. And a company, and I don't, I kind of, you can't really argue with it, do this incredibly well, are Nike. Nike figured out very early on in their business that it's not about the product they're selling. It's it's about how that product makes people feel, or what it can make them be. You can see this, what you see in front of you here is the Colin Kaepernick, the man who refused to, or who kneeled for the national anthem in America. And as soon as he did that, and he was basically kicked out of the NFL, Nike picked him up, and they released this absolutely brilliant campaign, believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And the entire, there's an advert on it. My original thing, I had the video, but obviously I'm not going to play the video for you now. But it's about 2 minutes, and not once do you see a Nike product in it. It's about the big, the big sports stars who kind of stood against people and fought for what they believed in, fighting. And it's just absolutely brilliant. And most of Nike's advertising campaigns are centered around this. As you can see, the four examples I have is find your greatness, risk everything, be the hero you didn't have, girls from Compton don't play tennis, they own it. It's this kind of emotional, far-reaching stuff that it's not about the products, it's about the people. It's about how that product can make you better and how it can get you from A to B. And then you have this kind of sense that when you see someone sponsored by Nike or a sports star, or someone wearing Nike, that they're better, that they are working harder, they're doing more, they stand for something. And they've created this massive kind of pool of emotional connection that is, it's just brilliant. And they're advertising, they're one of my favorite advertisers out there. That risk everything campaign I remember from a few years ago, and it was absolutely, I thought it was absolutely genius at the time. So what you had is you had a group of kids, playing soccer on a field in England. And I don't know if when you were younger, you used to play soccer on the greens outside. But what you do is you'd say, I'm Eric Cantona, and then you'd play as Eric Cantona for the game. So what they did in the ad is they actually said that. So one guy walked in and going, I'm going to be Ronaldo, and then he turns into Ronaldo, and actually the whole advert is him playing as Ronaldo. So every time, so it's about becoming this big thing by working really hard, and you can be as great as the greatest people, even though you're only this kid playing on the green. And it's very, very well done, but it creates this kind of sense of achievement. But they're absolutely brilliant. And this is the end of my presentation, guys. So thank you very much for tuning in. If you do have any questions, throw them into the chat, and I'll answer them. I'll give everybody a few minutes to answer it in, or if not, if you had enough, you can feel free to leave and enjoy your isolation. Thanks again for tuning in. Very much appreciated. Not a problem, guys. Thank you very much.